our Shadow Minister for Disabled People.
Thank you, everyone, and let me begin by saying how pleased I am to be here with you all this afternoon. I want to pay tribute and thanks to Z2K for all the important work that they are doing in advocating for disabled people. For me, it was great to work alongside them in challenging the government with those misleading ESA 65B letters to GPs, and I look forward to campaigning with them on this and other issues going forward. I also want to just pay tribute to you, Jim. Thank you for being here and sharing your experience, because what you've done is just demonstrated to each and every one of us issues that we are aware of, but that this hostile environment that this government has created is alive and kicking, and it is hitting disabled people. When Labour pledged to implement the Beveridge Report back in 1945, it envisaged a social security system that would act as a safety net, there to support each and every citizen in their time of need, strengthening that social contract for those facing hardship in our society, and to remove those 5 social ills. But what we have seen under the Coalition and Conservative governments is that social security is no longer seen as a basic right. And this was first demonstrated in the 2016 UN report that labelled austerity as grave and systematic violations on the rights of disabled people. And again in 2019, the UN reporter into extreme poverty, likened the DWP to a 19th century workhouse. Now these are shocking indictments on the government over the past decade. But despite that growing body of evidence, the government are choosing to bury their heads in the sand to this reality. And when the former Chancellor, Philip Hammond, was challenged on those UN findings, he downplayed those conclusions as being nonsense. And that is despite nearly 40 billion pounds of cuts to social security would have been made by 2020. Now, I believe we need the right kind of social security system, one that respects the values of the Beveridge Report, a system that we can all be as proud of as we are of our wonderful National Health Service. A system that will provide security and dignity in retirement if we fall on hard times or if we are ill or disabled. Because we have had a decade of the government vilifying disabled people as being skivers and scroungers, they have created that hostile environment. And that's what we need to bring an end to. We need a system that is fair and that is compassionate and that will be there for each and every one of us in our time of need. So to that end, we need to reshape the culture for a Department of Social Security. A program that is, free from tick box assessments and sanctions, towards a more person-centred approach that provides an adequate standard of living. And I say this because the freeze to some forms of working age social security, as well as the way that social security has been uprated, has led to very low rates of money being paid to people. And we know if the government had chosen to lift the freeze this year in 2019, hundreds of thousands of people, up to 200, could have been broken free from poverty. Many families are failing to reach that minimum adequate acceptable living standard, which is unacceptable. And I believe that there is no starker example of this than the impact of universal credit. Now we know that the Trussell Trust did a report that highlighted that 1.6 million emergency food parcels were handed out in the previous year. And that was mainly due to the lack of income from universal credit. And just a week ago, what the Trussell Trust identified was the impact that that 5-week wait is having on people. So absolutely, it is only right that that 5-week wait is scrapped. I believe that strongly as well. But universal credit has also acted as a vehicle for cuts for disabled people. And I also want to just pay tribute to the work that Ruth and the Select Committee has done into universal credit and just into social security and the impact on marginalised groups, including disabled people, because the government, as I say, choose to bury their heads in the sand and not fully acknowledge the impact that its policies are having. But you also have a poor social security system that doesn't provide for an adequate standard of living for disabled people. So as well as those low rates, it is compounded by an assessment framework that we all know is not fit for purpose. These assessments are based on that tick box approach by private companies with very little accountability, other than when they go before the select committees, which is very good. But we know that over 70% of personal independence decisions are overturned. And across the country, disabled people are forced to wait, up to 9 months or 36 weeks. I think in some cases, Raji was telling me 40 weeks. This is unacceptable for people being denied their vital support that they need in order to try and live independently. And the Ministry of Justice is spending over £25 million in administering those PIP appeals. It's 25 million in challenging decisions where they are effectively wrong. So we know the system is broken and the consequences of that is devastating. This year the government have revealed that over 5,000 people died within 6 months after being found fit for work under the work capability assessment in the past decade. And we've all heard stories of people that have lost their lives due to this. And that's why I was pleased when we chose to support the Justice for Jodie Whiting petition that was calling for that independent inquiry into those deaths. And it was great that over 50,000 people signed that petition. But on top of that, we then also have a system of conditionality and sanctions. And since 2012, under that welfare reform act, sanctions has been more severe and they have been more punitive and more long-lasting. And that it's a regime that was labelled by Ruth's committee has been pointlessly cruel. Since 2010, there's been 1 million disabled people have faced sanctions. And we know what the impact of that is. Those people have less money, therefore, they'll be forced to take out loans or forced to skip meals or for possibly missing an appointment. So as I say, and as everyone has to acknowledge, the past decade, the government created this hostile environment, a system that has denied disabled people and others the support they are entitled to, instead of being a fair and compassionate system. Disabled people have had to rely on tribunals and court rulings to access justice. The DWP are carrying out an astonishing 7 reviews into where they have wrongly deprived disabled people. And a majority of those have been due to the legal challenges.
1 minute, are you okay?
1 minute? Just the
Or
one.
2 minutes then, go on then.
2, thank you. Thank you. I will be very quick. So, look, Labour will end the hostile environment. I will fight tooth and nail to do that if we get into government and I am asked to serve as the Minister for Disabled People. We will also end the outsourcing of these assessments to these private companies. We've already committed to saying that we will be scrapping the work capability assessment and the assessment for PIP. And we are aiming to have an assessment which focuses on the barriers faced by disabled people in society. It's the institutional barriers to areas like the labour market, and it's the attitude barriers that we also face as well. Working with GPs and other medical professionals to maintain that level of integrity within the medical practice, because I believe the government have tried to use them in many respects. We will continue to repeal cuts to things like the work-related activity group and the limited capability for work group. Labour will also ensure that legal aid is available to all disabled people, appealing their social security. We were proud of our 2017 manifesto for disabled people, Nothing About You Without You, and it is building on that and ensuring that disabled people are at the heart of our movement, embodying what we believe. This is how we will build that transformative movement capable of reshaping this country and capable of demolishing a hostile environment that has marginalised so many in Britain today. I want to thank you all for listening, and it has been a pleasure to be able to see a packed room, frankly, of people that care